La-di-da, la-di-da, la-di-da. You do this as well, cleaning fingerprints off your cell phone and all kinds of electronics. You know, but where would we be without our fingerprints? Why do we need them? Well, if you have a look at this picture here, without fingerprints, you couldn't pick up that glass. Because fingerprints provide friction, all right? They're raised portions of our skin that create dermal ridges that allow us to have that kind of grip. Sort of like being on ice with your skates. You know, if it's really, really slippery, you just slide right along. You need the friction to keep you there in one place. Fingerprints would have been very important in our evolution, enabling us to hold on to tools, to somewhat climb trees. So, have you ever wondered, well, what kind of animals have fingerprints? I mean, they're not as widespread as you might think. For example, dogs and cats, they don't have fingerprints. They have claws, first of all right? Whereas humans, monkeys and apes are primates, which means we have lost our claws through evolution and we have nails, all right? Monkeys, apes, and humans are also the only mammals, we are primates, that have fingerprints. When do fingerprints form? They form when we are in the womb, and they do not change within our lifetime, all right? They're with you from birth until death. Now, obviously, certain trauma can happen to the skin, but in general, those traumas sort of push the ridges apart. They don't actually change the pattern of your fingerprint. What about identical twins? I mean, if everybody on the planet has a different fingerprint, all right, what about identical twins? Well, you know that identical twins are essentially genetically the same, but it turns out identical twins do have indeed different fingerprints. So fingerprints can be used to identify people. Now, the first use of fingerprints in identification was with the ancient Chinese, and they used to use them for when somebody sold a house or some property to somebody else. Like in this picture, the person would put their fingerprint on the document, and that would serve as a form of identification. The first criminal use of fingerprints was in 1892 to help identify an individual named Frances Roja. This was a woman who murdered her two sons, and then she cut her own throat trying to blame it on somebody else. But her fingerprints were used to identify her and to convict her. And here's a picture of her fingerprints. So what are the main types of fingerprints? I mean, if you take a close look, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at our fingerprints. What do we expect to find? Well, fingerprints fall into three main categories. The majority of fingerprints are loops. About 60 to 65% of people have this loop. About 30 to 35% of people have a circle type structure, which is called a whorl. And only about 5% of people have arches. Now, there are other varieties of loops, whorls, and arches to make things a bit more complicated, but we don't need to get into that. That's something for a criminal investigator or for forensic scientists. We're going to look at the general types of fingerprints, and we're going to see the fact that you actually have more than one type of fingerprint on your hand, all right? So, for example, I looked at my thumb a little while ago, and I discovered I had a whorl on my thumb. I looked at my first finger, I realized I had a loop on that one. So you can have different fingerprints on different fingers, and that's why when the police take a suspect in and they fingerprint them, they don't just do one finger, they do all the fingers of both hands. All right? So how can you see your fingerprints? Well, this is a very, very simple little technique that we're going to look at. To examine your fingerprints, here's what you're going to need. A piece of blank white paper, a pencil, magnifying glass, some nice big wide tape like bookbinding tape, and some scissors. Alright, here's what you do. Take the pencil and make sure you got some lead on there, and put a whole bunch of lead right on the paper, just like that. Okay, get it good and dark. Alright, now I think I'm going to have a look at my thumb. We want to see my thumb. Can you see my thumb there? Alright, we're going to take a look at that. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to take a piece of tape here and I am going to cut it, get it ready for the fingerprint, thumbprint, whatever. Alright, and I'm just going to take that and I'm going to stick it on the side, and I am trying not to touch the edges of that. So here we go. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lift the camera up. Hang on. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is you're going to take one of your fingers, I think I'm going to use my thumb, and I'm going to press it right onto that lead there that I put for my pencil, and I'm going to sort of roll it from one side to the next, and I'm going to try to be nice and firm, and I'm going to try not to smudge it. Now, I've got a little bit of lead on my thumb. Take the piece of tape, stick your thumb right on the tape, press it down good, remove it quickly, take the tape, stick it on the paper. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that very well, but there's a nice impression of my fingerprint there. We're going to take a look at this with a magnifying glass. There you go. That is my thumbprint. Fingerprint, thumbprint, same difference. And if you look very carefully, you can see it looks like a circle. So that is a whorl. So it's very easy to do. Check out your other fingers. Here is my index finger, and it's got a different pattern. Looks a little bit like an arch to me. Also looks a little bit like a loop. Wasn't a very good fingerprint, but you can see it's definitely different than my thumb. So there's a lot of variety right on your hands. So hope you enjoyed this. Give it a try.